What if the soul could find its way back, not as a ghost, but in a new life, carrying memories too powerful to die? This is not just a story of disappearance. It is a story of return. Sometimes the dead do not stay dead. Sometimes they find their way back to the living world not as ghosts, not as memories, but as something far stranger. In the small coastal town of Wexley, the disappearance of Thomas Grayson had been a mystery that refused to die. Thomas, a respected historian, had vanished without a trace one autumn afternoon 5 years earlier. One moment, he had been seen walking along the rugged cliffs that bordered the town. The next, he was simply gone. No body was ever found. No clues, only questions. For a time, the town mourned. Candlelight vigils were held. The cliffs were searched and searched again. Eventually, as all tragedies do, it began to fade from daily conversation, tucked away in the dusty corners of grief, until the day a boy named Eli Dawson arrived. Eli was 9 years old when he first moved to Wexley with his mother, Claire, who had inherited an old, crumbling cottage from a distant relative she barely remembered. The townspeople were polite but reserved. It was a place where strangers remained strangers for a long time. But Eli was different. He had a presence that unsettled people. It was not just his solemn eyes, too old for his young face. It was not just the strange way he spoke sometimes, using turns of phrase that sounded pulled from another era. It was the things he knew. Details about the cliffs, the layout of the old library, the names of people he should not have known. Claire thought at first that he was just a bright, imaginative boy, until he stood before the town memorial for Thomas Grayson one evening, stared at the engraved name, and said quietly, "I used to be him." Claire laughed it off at first, a child's imagination, a misunderstanding. But the look in Eli's eyes chilled her. He was not joking. He was remembering. The rumors started to spread. People who had known Thomas well began to notice unsettling similarities. Eli's handwriting, when he wrote absent-mindedly, mirrored Thomas's sharp, looping style. He spoke passionately about ancient civilizations, particularly Mesopotamia. Just as Thomas had. He had a small scar on his left hand, in the exact spot where Thomas had burned himself years before while restoring a fragile artifact. And then there were the memories. Eli recounted events from Thomas's life with eerie precision. The time Thomas had broken his leg falling from the lighthouse steps, the secret place under the cliffs where he would hide and read as a boy, the argument he had with his brother 2 weeks before he disappeared, details that had never been made public. At first, the town was skeptical. Then it grew fearful. Was it a hoax? A bizarre coincidence? Or something much more disturbing? Claire, desperate for answers, sought out Dr. Helena Ward, a psychologist who specialized in past life phenomena. Dr. Ward had dealt with hundreds of cases where children claimed to remember previous lives. Some were easily explained away. Others defied logic. She agreed to meet Eli. During the session, Eli spoke under light hypnosis. His voice changed. Deeper. Measured. He recounted in vivid detail Thomas Grayson's life and his death. "I slipped," he said, tears leaking from the corners of his closed eyes. "I did not jump. I did not run. The rock gave way under my feet. I fell into the sea. It was cold, so cold. Then nothing, silence, until the light came, and I followed it. And now I am here." Dr. Ward sat back in stunned silence. This was no ordinary case. Eli Dawson said somehow was carrying the memories, the emotions, even the unfinished dreams of a man who had lived and died years before he was born. The revelation divided the town. Some saw it as proof of the soul's survival beyond death. Others whispered darkly of curses, of forbidden magic. But the biggest question remained: why had Thomas returned? And why, as a child, Eli himself seemed unsure. Sometimes, he would weep at night, murmuring about things he could not yet understand, responsibilities left unfinished, apologies never made, dreams abandoned halfway. It was clear that whatever force had pulled him back into the world, it was tied to something unresolved, something that demanded closure. Over the months that followed, Eli and Claire worked with Dr. Ward to piece together Thomas Grayson's final days. They found that Thomas had been working on a major discovery before he died, an ancient artifact hidden beneath the cliffs, rumored to hold secrets from a lost civilization. His notes, scattered and incomplete, hinted at a hidden cave system, a place never found despite exhaustive searches after his disappearance. Driven by a mix of hope and dread, they decided to look again, this time led by Eli's memories. The journey was dangerous. Storms battered the cliffs. Paths once familiar to Thomas had crumbled with time. But Eli moved with certainty, leading them down treacherous trails no one else dared follow. Finally, after hours of searching, they found it, a narrow crevice in the rock, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Inside, the cave opened into a vast, echoing chamber. At the center, half buried in silt and seaweed, was a stone chest, ancient, untouched. Eli knelt before it, his hands trembling. "This is what I was meant to find," he whispered. "This is why I came back." Inside the chest, they discovered relics beyond imagination, bronze tools inscribed with unknown symbols, fragments of parchment preserved by mineral deposits, and a single golden amulet, shaped like an eye surrounded by flames. The Eye of the Watcher. Thomas had called it in his notes, a symbol of eternal return, of rebirth. Claire and Dr. Ward stared at the artifacts in awe. This discovery would rewrite history, but for Eli, it was something more. It was a key, a bridge between what he had been and what he now was. By bringing the past to light, he was setting himself free. In the weeks that followed, experts descended on Wexley. The discovery made headlines around the world. Eli chose to remain anonymous. He had no interest in fame. He only wanted peace. And slowly, as the artifacts were studied and the cave preserved, the memories began to fade. The weight of Thomas Grayson's life lifted from Eli's small shoulders. He still carried traces, a love for history, a respect for the fragile beauty of the past. But he was no longer trapped between worlds. He was simply Eli, a boy given a second chance, a soul finally at rest. And sometimes, when the wind howled over the cliffs, if you listened closely, you could almost hear it, a whisper, a thank you, a goodbye, and perhaps, just perhaps, a promise that no soul is ever truly lost, not while there is someone willing to remember, not while there is still unfinished light waiting to be found. For a time, life in Wexley found a new rhythm. The discovery beneath the cliffs had brought prosperity to the town. Tourists, historians, and journalists poured in, eager to glimpse the ancient relics that had been hidden for centuries. Eli Dawson, now almost 11 years old, became somewhat of a myth himself. The boy who had remembered a life that was never his, or so people believed. Only Claire, Dr. Ugard, and a few others knew the deeper truth, and only Eli carried the full burden, because the memories of Thomas Grayson had not entirely faded. They had simply changed, shifted. New dreams began to trouble Eli, visions not just of Thomas's life, but of others, men and women he had never seen before, their faces blurred but their emotions raw and powerful. He felt connected to them somehow, as if thin golden threads tied his soul to theirs, stretching across time and space. At first, he thought it was just imagination, residual effects of his unique past. But one night, a dream came so vivid that Eli woke sobbing. He saw a woman with silver hair standing at the mouth of a burning cave, clutching a golden amulet to her chest. He heard her voice, clear and urgent. Find the others before it is too late. The next morning, Eli told Claire everything. She listened carefully, concern etched deep into her face. "It cannot just be coincidence," she said at last. The amulet, the memories, the cave. It is like pieces of a much bigger puzzle. And reluctantly, they returned to Dr. Ward. After hearing Eli's new visions, she grew serious. There are stories," she said slowly, "of souls that travel together across many lives, groups bound by ancient promises, unfinished oaths, or karmic debts. Perhaps what happened to Thomas to you is part of something even larger, a cycle waiting to be broken." They decided to dig deeper, starting with the amulet. Experts had studied the eye of the Watcher, but no one had truly understood it. Dr. Ward contacted a historian named Professor Annika Vernam, who specialized in ancient symbology. When Annika examined photographs of the amulet, she went very still. "This," she said, "is not from Mesopotamia or Egypt or any known civilization. It belongs to a lost lineage, a people who believed that certain objects could anchor a soul to the material world, prevent it from moving on. The eye," she explained, was not merely a symbol, it was a lock, and somewhere out there, perhaps still hidden, was the key. Eli began to have dreams more frequently. In each, he was someone different, a sailor battling a storm, a monk guarding a crumbling temple, a woman weaving a tapestry of stars. But always, the golden amulet appeared. Always, the message was the same. Find the others and set them free. Driven by a force he barely understood, Eli convinced Claire and Dr. Ward to help him search for the truth. They followed clues embedded in old myths, whispered in forgotten languages. They traced the path of the amulet across ancient maps, connecting dots that no one else had noticed. Each thread led them closer to a chilling realization. There had been others like Thomas Grayson, men and women throughout history who vanished without explanation, only to be remembered in fragments, in dreams, in strange children bearing scars and memories they could not have earned. It was as if the amulet had been calling souls back again and again, not for malice, not for power, but for redemption, for unfinished stories yearning to be completed. Their journey led them far beyond Wexley, to abandoned monasteries in Scotland, to sunken ruins off the coast of Italy, to silent deserts where ancient cities slumbered beneath the sands. And at each place, Eli felt a pull, a familiarity that transcended logic. At an old abbey in France, he met a girl named Soline. She was 12 years old, and like Eli, she bore a strange mark, a birthmark shaped like a flame on her wrist. She too had dreams, visions of lives she had never lived. Battles fought, lovers lost, promises broken. When Eli and Celine touched hands for the first time, a shock passed between them. Memories cascaded through their minds like falling stars, not just of Thomas and Elowen, but of dozens of lives. Different faces, different centuries, bound together by the same golden thread. The eye, the watcher, the promise. They realized the truth. They were not alone. They were part of a tapestry spanning millennia, a group of souls tasked with protecting something or perhaps someone vital to the balance between life and death. The amulet had been their beacon, their burden, their bond. But somewhere along the way, they had failed. The lock had been broken, the memories scattered, and now they were being called to finish what had begun long before the first stones of Wexley were ever laid. The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a map, hidden in the hollow spine of one of Thomas Grayson's ancient books. A map leading to a place older than any civilization remembered by history, a hidden sanctuary where the first Watchers had once gathered. The Sanctuary of Threads, a place where destiny could be rewritten, where cycles could be broken or sealed forever. Standing before the map, Claire placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. "Are you sure you want to do this, Eli?" Looking not like a boy, but like a soul forged through countless lifetimes, nodded. I'd have to," he said, "It is what I came back for. It is what we all came back for." And with that, the journey truly began. A journey not just across the world, but across the thin, trembling line between life and death, between memory and reality, between who we are and who we once were. The journey to the Sanctuary of Threads was not marked on any modern map. The clues Thomas had left behind, combined with Eli's memories and Soline's visions, led them to a remote valley deep within the Carpathian Mountains, a place untouched by time and mostly forgotten by history. Claire and Eli, Soline, and Dr. Ward traveled together, their group bound by trust and the silent understanding that what they sought was bigger than any of them alone. As they approached the valley, strange phenomena began to occur. Watches stopped working. Phones refused to find signals. The air grew heavy, thick with a charged stillness that made every breath feel important, almost sacred. The landscape itself seemed to shift when they were not looking, as if the earth was remembering and forgetting them in the same moment. Finally, after days of travel, they reached it, the sanctuary. It was not what they expected. No grand temple, no golden gates, just a circle of ancient standing stones, half buried in mist, humming with an energy that made the hair on the back of Claire's neck stand up. In the center of the circle, a pedestal of black stone, and resting atop it, another amulet, identical to the one found in Wexley, but glowing faintly from within. The Eye of the Watcher, the key. Eli stepped forward, his heart pounding. The stones around them seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. Soline followed, her hand finding his without hesitation. They stood together before the pedestal. As they reached for the amulet, "Vildelust," a voice echoed through the mist, not in words. In memories, visions cascaded over them. A great gathering of souls, long ago, pledging themselves to protect the balance between the seen and unseen worlds. A betrayal, a shattering of trust, the scattering of the Watchers across time, doomed to wander and forget until the cycle could be repaired. Eli saw himself not as Thomas, not as Eli, but as a figure clad in silver and blue, standing before the first sanctuary, vowing never to let darkness claim the world. Soline was there too, weaving golden threads of memory into the fabric of time. And others, countless others, some faces familiar, some forever lost. They understood now. The sanctuary was not a place. It was a memory, a bond, a living promise etched into the soul. And it was dying. Unless they acted, the amulet flared brighter as Eli's fingers brushed it. Pain lanced through him, 1,000 lives compressed into a single heartbeat. He saw battles fought and lost, loves found and torn away, sacrifices made and forgotten. But he did not let go. Neither did Soline. They held on, grounding each other against the torrent of history. Finally, the amulet grew still. In its silence, a new path revealed itself, a choice. Restore the cycle, or break it forever. To restore it meant binding themselves again, accepting the burden of memory, the endless return. To break it meant freedom. They did so, but also the loss of everything they had once vowed to protect. The balance between worlds would shatter. The dead would drift, anchorless. The living would lose something intangible, something sacred. Eli looked at Soline, at Claire, at Dr. Ward, at the countless faces flickering behind his closed eyes. He knew what he had to do, not out of duty, but out of love, out of remembrance. Together, he and Soline placed their hands on the amulet. We remember they whispered. "We forgive. We choose to endure." The stones around them blazed with light. The ground trembled. The mist thickened and then lifted, revealing not just the valley, but visions of other sanctuaries around the world. Ancient places where other watchers had gathered, waiting for the call to rise again. The balance was restored, the cycle renewed. But this time, with hope, with choice, not as a curse, but as a gift. When the light faded, Eli staggered back, exhausted but whole. The amulet had vanished, absorbed into the fabric of the world itself. Claire rushed to him, wrapping him in a fierce embrace. Celine stood silently, tears streaming down her face. Not from sadness, but from a joy too deep for words. They had done it. They had remembered. They had redeemed themselves, not just for Thomas Grayson, not just for their own lives, but for all who wandered between worlds. Lost and searching, they had built a bridge back home. In the years that followed, Eli grew into a young man of extraordinary wisdom. He and Celine kept in touch, their bond unbreakable. Claire published a book under a pseudonym, telling their story in veiled terms, a message to others who might feel the pull of forgotten memories. Dr. Ward continued her research, now with new certainty that the soul's journey was far greater and more complex than she had ever dared imagine. And sometimes, when the stars were particularly bright over Wexley, Eli would stand on the cliffs where Thomas had once fallen and smile, not because he missed the past, but because he finally understood it. He was not bound by it. He was born from it. Stronger, freer, alive, and somewhere in the vast, shimmering tapestry of souls. Thomas Grayson smiled too, at peace, at last. Some disappearances are never truly final. Some souls refuse to be forgotten, across lifetimes. Across broken memories and unfinished promises, they find their way back not for revenge, not for fame, but for remembrance. Eli Dawson was not just a boy. He was a bridge between worlds, a living thread in the endless tapestry of life, memory, and hope. And perhaps, if you listen closely to the winds at the edge of forgotten places, you will hear them too, the footsteps of those who came back, to finish what love and loyalty once began. Because the soul's true journey is not to escape life, it is to remember it.